What's happening, crew? It's Captain Joe. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Fish Bump TV. Today is the day after we have actually separated the boat from the mold. So I'm still kind of on a high. Yesterday was pretty mentally exhausting, exciting but exhausting, but today I am feeling awesome about it. We are in the boat working. It is actually January the 22nd, kind of just give y'all a timeline. We've been really hustling, making a lot of progress. Today, we're getting ready to finally button up the water tank. I know in a previous episode, y'all seen me working on the water tank. Had to put multiple coats of primer on it. Then I want to be sure to let the primer thoroughly cure and make sure that it had a really good bond and it was completely cured off. But today, you can see we've got the lid fit down on top. I've got some weights on here. We've kind of been warming this up with the heat gun. And we're going to be using something a little bit different today that y'all haven't seen me use. This is a 3M product. It's a high strength filler and it's like a bonding agent. It's, I'm gonna take the lid off where y'all can see. It's like a fiber-rated putty. Kind of like a thick putty, something like peanut butter, I would say, in consistency, and it takes a catalyst to activate that. And what we're going to do, y'all, is I'm going to putty this panel down first before we fiberglass it. Now, I'm going to fiberglass it super heavy eventually, but right now, right down in that little groove or that little crack where it meets the hull, I'm going to use that high strength putty to bond it so that it will hold the lid nice and level, because y'all can see that's why I've got some straight edges on there and I've got some weights on there, because that lid had a tendency to want to curve or bow a little bit. So that's where we are. So here's the finished product, y'all. We put that 3M putty all the way around the perimeter. Almost looks like blue frosting, like something you put on a cake or something, but you would not want to eat that stuff. But we're using a vinyl ester all the way around, because it really repels water and moisture. And since that's going to be holding water all the time in that water tank, we got a epoxy lining inside of it, and we got the vinyl ester around the edges. We got to use the vinyl ester around the edges because we're just going to use conventional fiberglass to glass the lid down. That's the best way to go because it ties in really well to the rest of the boat. So there it is. We're going to go cut some pieces of biaxial glass, take all those pieces off of there, get ready to glass this thing down. There it is. There is 3 layers of 1708 biaxial glass and 1 layer of matte. That's the water tank lid. So me and Mark are down at the shop. We've lifted the console up in the boat. So we got kind of a rainy garbage day today. We're trying to get ready to get some more of the floor panels put in. We got the finished console and the leaning post, and we're just looking inside the console. We're contemplating cutting that forward floor right up there a little bit further back so we got better access to the batteries. We've also worked on more epoxy around the fuel tank, a really nice epoxy fillet or fillet they call it. So anyway, it's looking really good. Hopefully this week we'll get several of these floor panels in. We're just about to actually take this console back out. Pretty cool to have it up in the boat though, and kind of just get an idea of how she's going to look in here. I can't believe it, but it's already Monday, January the 31st. So January is just absolutely flying by. We've been super busy the last couple of days. Apologize for not updating y'all, but last time y'all saw we were working on the water tank, I went ahead and decided I had put in the 3 layers of biaxial glass across, and I went ahead and decided to add some little ribs or some stiffeners. Put 1 layer of biaxial and we bonded that on with that high strength vinyl ester filler. But this thing is like crazy tough. By putting those little ribs in there, the floor will actually kind of set on there. We'll put a bed of 5200, which is that really good high strength marine sealant. We're actually going to be putting that floor panel down today. And we got all the blocks ready that are going to go under and tie these two together. That's a 6-inch wide block made out of 3/4 Coosa that I resin coated on both sides. That's going to go halfway under, and then we're going to use a whole series of stainless steel screws, and we're going to resin coat this, kind of use that as glue. And those are all the pieces. And then the middle piece, which has to span a greater distance, I went ahead and put a layer of 1708 biaxial on it on the bottom side to stiffen it. This is scuffed up with a grinder, and again, this will kind of just go up underneath there, and we'll have a whole bunch of screws and resin to glue that up there. And then what I've really been working on the last few days is getting these tanks buttoned up, because I can't put the floor panels down until the tanks are all done. So I had the water tank up front, so I focused on it. We're gonna get it that panel on today. And then the last couple days, I've been working a lot on this fuel tank. Now this, you know, this is that $3,000 fuel tank, 160 gallons, custom made for this boat. We had primed it with the real good, the Interlux 2000E epoxy primer. I'm gonna show y'all again what we used. It's that product right there. And then we're using the System 3 epoxy. It's a 2-to-1 mix on the epoxy that we made the filler all the way around the edges. But what y'all didn't see, and I'm just gonna show you super briefly, is we added one more layer of epoxy and we used a real light fiberglass cloth. That is a 8-ounce, I believe, what they call that. And it's a real tight little weave. And I actually put a layer of this all the way around the perimeter and kind of tied it from the sides of the stringer out to the fuel tank, and something kind of like that. And it was stuck in a bed of epoxy resin, and I went all the way around the edges and then back here where it transitions onto the boat. Matter of fact, you can see, if you look really close, you can kind of see the edge. Now what I did is I've detailed sanded this really good. You can see now the bolts are like completely encapsulated in epoxy. These brackets, the idea is if any water ever gets on top here, this is kind of filled at an angle. The water should flow around, and there's gonna be a gap over the top of this tank where the floor panel sits up here. So airflow should be able to move, and water flow as well, which really there shouldn't be much water on top of there, but we just wanna keep the water away from contacting the aluminum. So that's why we spent so much time sealing this thing and coating this thing. We're fixing to paint the 2000E epoxy primer on top of the tank. I've already mixed this. You gotta let it sit for like 20 minutes once you've mixed the two parts together. They call that an induction time. I did thin it a little bit, and we're just gonna go around the edges. But I wanted to show y'all a little hack. So that's my roller right there, and you'll notice it's covered in tape. And you're like, why would you do that? But if you look real close, can you show them, Logan? Look at all those fibers that it pulls out. So you can take a fairly inexpensive roller, and I did this before we got ready to paint this thing, and it will take off a ton of loose fibers that would otherwise end up in the paint or in the primer. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna go ahead and load that roller up nice and easy. I don't want to overload it. I just want to kind of coat the thing. We're not trying to put too much on. We're going to do multiple coats. And here we go with the primer. Looks so nice once you put the primer on. It goes from looking like patchwork to finish work. Pretty proud of that. I think that looks excellent. Y'all see that really pretty smooth transition. Now obviously I can't get the roller in around these filler necks here, so I'm just going to use the brush. I'm going to, what I call dabbing, and the epoxy had kind of went up around these filler necks, and I'm going to just dab. And the dabbing is a good way to get that primer on there, and it kind of matches the texture of the roller. And there's a little piece of debris. That's why I wear a glove. I can take that little piece of debris out of there, and I'm going to dab a little more right in these corners. A brush is really effective for that. I can't really get in there with the roller. Otherwise, I prefer the roller pretty much over the brush always, but for getting up in these little tight spots like that. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go all the way around this boat just like that. All right, here you go. I'm gonna take over. Thank you, sir. Logan was cameraman. He's doing a fine job. And I'm going to continue right on around the tank, so y'all don't have to see all that. But look how nice that looks once we put just a little bit of primer. Really seals everything up, coats everything. Okay, it's after lunch, y'all, and I was starting the primer on the fuel tank, but I've got it all done now. Look how nice and clean those edges look. It's pretty much seamless all the way around. I only put one coat on there today. I'm gonna try to put one more coat on this afternoon right before we quit, because it needs like 5 hours between coats or something like that, approximately, depending on the temperature. It can be less or more. And then I've been working on the next floor panel. So we got the furthermost floor panel up back like a week and a half ago. I thought I was gonna get this other one sooner, but stuff came up. But I've been pre-drilling all the holes. So you can see I've plotted out all these lines, and you can see I've pre-drilled little pilot holes where every fastener goes. And then this is where one sheet ends right there and the new one begins. There's going to be a block that goes between those. Half of the block is on this sheet and half is on that side. So there's one like between that stringer, between that stringer, between that stringer there, that bigger span. We went with a wider block and more screws, or like 50 screws in just that one panel. One of the reasons a boat built like this is so strong, y'all, I talked about earlier, like boats built in a factory, usually they have what they call a liner, or the inner liner, where the interior of the boat is one big molded piece. And it's real pretty finished gel coat on the inside, and they can't really run screws or fasteners down through it because it would damage the cosmetic finish. So they rely on like putties on top of the stringer system, and it's like just a glue, basically. This boat, I just counted, there are 136 screws in just this panel alone. So just this second panel, and we're probably gonna put like 2 tubes of 5200, which is really cool in that it bonds really aggressively, but it's flexible. So if the boat flexes and twists, it doesn't get brittle like some putties or adhesives. That's why you have boats with the stringer systems breaking or floors coming loose, especially as much as we run. That's one reason why people like these old, these Kenners over here. So that is my, of course, my 03 Kenner that we've ran with thousands of trips in. That has been a fantastic boat. But it's kind of put together the same way, but it's done with like marine plywood and screws. This Coosa is stronger than marine plywood, and we're running a ton of stainless steel fasteners. Talked to the guy from Coosa the other day. He said, man, you are absolutely over-engineering, overbuilding this boat. He said it's going to be ballistically tough. So I'm pretty happy with that. So actually, he said it was not going to be ballistically tough because ballistic would mean you could shoot it with a bullet, and he said don't shoot it with a bullet. A bullet will go through it. So I got to clarify that. I use the term ballistically, and he corrected, and he said no, it's not, but it's going to be crazy tough. And then there's all of our 5200. So what we're going to be doing, y'all, here in just a little bit this afternoon, I'm going to put some beads of 5200, run all the screws in, and we'll get this panel down before the end of the day. We're back. It's been a couple days. We were getting this floor panel down, the one with 136 screws last time. We've made a lot of progress. We've completely finished the fuel tank. I had to build this ridge here. The console will actually sit on either side of that. And then this ridge is designed to really bolster, stiffen the floor. And it's also designed to keep water from flowing from the back of the boat up toward the front of the boat and falling in the battery compartment. But I thought y'all might appreciate, we talked about how many screws, and you're like, well, man, 136 screws, that sounds like a lot. That is actually not the most we're gonna put per panel. We're back here a little ways. Check this out, y'all. There are over 200 screws in this panel, and I left them all kind of exposed so you can get an idea of how many that is. You can see them a little better when they're up off the floor. And you can see there is no shortage of big fasteners. Got 1 5/8" screws there, and these are 2 1/2s going down into the main frame. But over 200 screws, and we are moving right along. We have made a lot of progress working our way back. I won't lie, it's taken more time than I anticipated. Tons of screws in this panel too. This one's gonna see a lot of traffic. You can see all of those fasteners. So we've been working really, really hard, but it's kind of like repetitive stuff. We haven't really been doing anything different, but I thought y'all might. Matter of fact, that was my brother's Mark's suggestion. I pinned them all in there, and he said, man, that is cool to be able to see all those fasteners. This is also the cutout access to the fuel sending unit, and the fuel fittings are under there, but we just put some masking paper on there because we don't want resin to drip through. Okay, y'all, so check it out. Mark's holding that panel. What's happening, Marky Mark? Hey. Check that out, y'all. There's the stringers. We put some marks where we know exactly where to stop the 5200. We got the masking paper over the fuel tank so resin won't drip. You can see the connecting blocks from one panel to the other. Those panels right there. Go to the next panel, and you can see kind of all those screw holes and the underside of the connector blocks or the butt blocks on this side. So kind of cool. Been prepping all day long really to get this one panel ready to go down. We've done some glass work as well, but it's kind of cool to see it from this perspective. Once we cover up those holes, they will not see the light of day ever again. All right, y'all, fixing to stick her down. It's already February the 21st. We've been putting floor panels down. Last time you guys saw us, me and Mark were getting ready to install that one right there. You can see we've got all the screw heads sunk down, got the access panel to the fuel tank, and we've got the other two panels kind of cut and fit back there, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do for the floor drain. There's several different options we can do, and sometimes the best thing to do when you don't know for sure and you don't want to just stop progress is to move on to something else. So what we've done, if you look up here, we've gone back over all the fasteners, and you can see I've dabbed some resin down on top of each screw head there, and you can really kind of see them when you look up there. You can kind of see the pattern of the stringers and the seams and whatnot. And what we're going to be doing is coming back and filling those with some of this this high strength filler. So it's the same material that's down here in this corner. So the way these floors are put down, underneath this edge here, there's that bead of 5200. Then we're filling that gap with this high strength filler, and then we're actually going to be fiberglassing all the way across from the floor, from the sides all the way across to the floor, multiple layers back there. Now what I did day before yesterday, I actually got up here and finished this compartment. You can see I filled those runners with some of the high strength filler and then went over it with some biaxial and then some matte. You can see how this is kind of just a random pattern there. That's generally what we do. We're going to be in a finished panel, so that's kind of cool. You'll be able to see that floor in there when you open up this access hatch. That's where we're going to keep all of our life jackets and safety equipment and whatnot, and got that all kind of buttoned up there. So that's pretty exciting. We want to go ahead and start getting some glass on this floor though, because while I'm figuring out what I want to do with the drain back there, I can go ahead and get the seats. And you can see we've already got some marks on the floor where the seats are going to kind of be U-shaped. They're going to wrap around. Woo, check this out, y'all. We have got the floor resin coated. So we've been working on the floor now for a while. I won't lie, it's taking more time than I thought it was going to take. But check this out. We've got the Coosa floor down all the way to the back. Now these still got to put some fasteners in. But yesterday we filled all the screw holes where we had fastened this thing down. You remember I showed all the fasteners. Each one of those holes has to be filled. And then I sanded the excess material off, and then we resin coated the floor. So that's why it's shiny. Kind of like primer. You want to resin coat that Coosa before you get ready to put the glass down. And that's going to kind of be one of the next steps. We also put a real nice radius in the corners here, a real nice transition from the sides, from the bottom up to the sides. But man, it looks good. That is a big old floor there. I mean, that is a world of room. I know the camera, it's kind of hard to grasp it, but sure does look cool with the floor in there. This is like right up in the bow storage compartment looking back. That is a lot of room. So today we're working on the drains for the floor panel, y'all. I know I've been putting the floor panels down for a while. The drain for the back has kind of been one of those things that's kind of had me a little bit, I'm not sure about what I wanted to do. So I wanted to be sure about it before I did it. And so what I've come up with is I'm going to be using this style drain, which has been around forever. That's made by a company called Perco. There's a little check ball in there with a strainer, and then you got a hose fitting on there that's barbed, and there basically would be a hose that runs from it right out to a fitting at the back of the boat. And my dilemma has been I don't want to mount it flush on the deck because it sticks up above the deck a little bit, and sand and debris and whatnot wouldn't get out of it. So I want to put it in a recess. So I came up with basically recessing it down. I got to take a router and cut like a 1/2 inch deep cut, recess it down, and I've actually got a piece of material called starboard that is cut out, and it's the same, basically the slightly larger diameter and a little bit deeper than the drain. Now the drain would actually be coming from underneath. I'd be drilling a hole right here, and this would fit down through that and into it. And what I want is water and debris to kind of come down at a little bit of an angle and then drain flush into this. So that's why I want that relief where it's like flush when it goes in the floor. I hope that makes sense. I know when I get all done, you guys will be able to see the completed process. But what I'm doing right now is I'm using a big hole saw. It's a big 1/2 inch drill with a big old giant hole saw, and it's much easier for me to cut a circle. Like I kind of cut the outline of how much I need to router out than it would be just to take the router and do it what we call freehand, where you're just trying to hold the router and make it perfectly go around that circle. So I'm using the big hole saw, and this is 3/4 of an inch thick, and I didn't want to cut all the way through it, so I marked a black line 1/2 of an inch up from the edge. Y'all can see that, and that way when you're cutting, you can tell you don't go too far, because that would be a big no-no. If I cut all the way through there, that would be a problem. So I just marked it 1/2 an inch. I cut down, and then I'm going to use the router right there to route that material out, and then I'm going to place a puck inside the middle of it and use like a filler to come back and fair that out, so that we got a nice recessed drain. Now I know that's a lot of words and it's complicated. It may have not made much sense. I don't know. I hope it did, y'all. But when I'm all done, you'll get to see it, and I think it'll look pretty good. We're also working on fitting in the bow of the boat. So this is kind of the first look y'all seen. I've been making some patterns and templates out of plywood, and the seating arrangement up here, you can kind of get a glimpse into what that's going to be like up front. You see, you got one level all the way around. We've also done some sanding and finishing up here, and I've been working back here the last few days. I had to get these little cross pieces in and get them fiberglassed, and then I did some finished fiberglass down in this last panel there. I put some matte on it and kind of made it where it looks really nice. But today we're working on the floor drain, so I'm going to show you all the process. We used a big hole saw like that to kind of cut the parameter, and then I used a router to notch that out about 1/2 an inch deep, and I put one layer of a fiberglass mat right there just to waterproof the Coosa. That's right on the bottom, and then I resin coated it again and kind of beveled these edges. And this morning I'm going to use some of the 3M high strength filler, and there it is right there. We've used some of that before when putting the water tank on. And I've made these little discs of starboard. It's like a polymer sheet, it's like a plastic sheet, and I actually put one coat of mold release wax on it. So there's the TR brand mold release, and I just applied one coat on there. Now typically fiberglass and putties and whatnot won't stick to this anyway, but I just want to be absolutely sure. I didn't want to put a bunch on there, so I just put one light coat and took it off. And what we're going to do, there's a hole you can see right there in the middle of that. There you go. And there's a hole exactly in the middle of that. And I want to use a drill bit just to center these up. And then I'm going to be using this little flexible putty blade here to kind of put a really nice bevel around this edge. So that way our drain, which that's a Perco, I believe that's 1.5 inch drain. That's kind of a standard. These things have been around forever, these Perco drains. I'm just going to go with it. We're going to have 2 of them. They got a check ball in there so that water can go out, but it doesn't come back in. And that'll recess it just ever so slightly. So when the water's draining out of the deck, there'll be a little pocket or a little hole, and if there's any little bits of sand or debris, it'll go through those drains and out the boat, and I won't have to like clean it out every day. On the Kenner, every time we get sand in the boat, every day I've got to clean out back there where the little drain plugs are. So that's what we're working on, and I'll show you guys here in a minute once I get this 3M filler beveled into those edges. We'll kind of see how that turns out. So we got it filled, y'all. I think it turned out pretty good. What do y'all think? There's a close-up. You can see how I kind of just lightly beveled, made a grade out from the middle out to the edge. And then what I plan on doing is using a layer of biaxial glass. When we glass this whole floor, I'm going to leave that little puck right there in place, and I'm just going to glass over that whole thing. And that's one reason we left these hole saw bit centered up in there. When the fiberglass has cured, I'm going to come back. That is a, what is that? That's a 4-inch hole saw, just FYI. And when I put the bit in it, I should be able to center it up where these are, and then just cut right down through that first layer of glass, kind of get down to that plastic puck, and then the puck should just pop right out. All right, y'all, we have made it to the afternoon. It's like Saturday. Heck, I don't even know what the date is. Mark, do you know? Is it like March the 10th?
11th, I think.
10th, 11th, 12th, March. It's we're into March already, y'all. It's just been, man, been trying to get a lot done. Been running some charters, but got this last panel. This is a pretty big deal. So there's the drains we were working on. I think that turned out pretty cool. We got that little disc of starboard in there and got the beveled edges. And again, I left all the screws standing proud. Mark counted them. He counted half of them. We doubled the numbers. 156 screws holding this floor panel down. Those are 2.5 inchers all around the main, down the main frames, and then 1 5/8 on all the connector blocks. Look at that one right there. Is that not crazy? And then we got the 5200 that we're putting, that's the 3M 5200, and we're putting it down really heavy down all these frames right here, making each compartment watertight. That stuff is crazy good at sealing and bonding. We've applied the 5200. There it is. So we're on top. You can see where it ends right there, but a big fat bead all the way up and around. We're around all the edges. That's going to make each one of those compartments watertight, and it's going to be an adhesive as well. So it's going to seal each one of those compartments. Mark's up there balancing that sheet. Yeah, man. And we're fixing to put some resin on these connector blocks. So that's the best way to bond this Coosa panel to panel. You can see we got this extending block over the edges. We're going to resin coat that, and then we're going to let it down, and you can see all the screw holes where we've pre-drilled all the way through this panel. And it's looking really good. Here's my pan I've got ready. I've got my resin, got my catalyst. That's the MEK, methyl ethyl ketone peroxide. We're going to put a little bit of activator in there. We're going to resin coat it, and we're fixing to stick that thing down. Check it out, y'all. Running drills in, running the screws in. Just like that. We want those screw heads just below the surface. 5200 squeezing out. We got a good watertight seal. That's Mark's little drill there. That's perfect. Yeah, doing a good job. I use a conventional on the others, but that thing is doing the job super nice. And then you can see here where we put these panels together, all of the screws down, and you can see we're squeezing 5200 out. We're squeezing resin out. We've got a nice tight bond. You can see that little bit of 5200 in the gap there. Glues everything together. That's gonna be watertight. Then we'll backfill that with some putty and then fiberglass. Let's see. Get Mark.
I think this is the last one.
That's the last one on the big. All right.
There we go.
Look at there. It feels nice and solid. Looks good. That's the last big panel. And then you can see how the drains kind of recess down, and then the rear deck wall is going to stick up here, so it should run all the water in. Got 2 more little panels to do. Pretty exciting. Looks good, I think. Let me go all the way up here to the front, and there's a little sneak peek. We're getting the bow deck put together. Still got to fit out the anchor locker, and we're going to build the gunnels. But man, that's a lot of fishing room. Forgive all the stuff there, y'all. That looks really good. Pretty exciting, but it is after dark on Saturday. I'm ready to call it a week, y'all. So y'all stay tuned. This might be the end of it. I want to tell y'all once again how much I appreciate everybody watching the videos and tuning in. Support of the channel, it means an awful lot to me. If you guys are enjoying the content and haven't already, please remember to hit that subscribe button, the thumbs up, the comments. We always like to hear how you guys are enjoying what we're doing here. And the shares are super helpful. So once again, everybody, it's Captain Joe down here in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And look over there, I got my brother Mark. He's hard at work. We're down here in the shop, man. And as always, we appreciate you guys so much, and we'll catch you guys next time out.